welcome to our in-depth study on the Nectar of Devotion, Western and Northern Oceans. This is January 8th, 2026. Somebody needs to mute with that barking dog in the background. So the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu means the ocean of the nectar or eternal mellow relationship or rasa of devotion. I should say that for those of you who haven't reviewed the Southern Ocean for some time, or if you didn't come from my previous class, I would strongly, strongly suggest that you go to my YouTube channel, Urmila Devi Dasi, and look at the initial summary of the Southern Ocean that is there, the beginning summary, not the ending summary, to review the 5 parts of rasa, because everything we're going to be doing in this class is based on those 5 parts of rasa. So Srila Rupa Goswami has explained them in the Southern Ocean in general. Now he's going to be applying them to each of the primary stibobs, each of the primary basic relationships, and each of the secondary stibobs, or each of the secondary relationships. And he's going to be going in order. He's going to first have a general view. How does this stibob become rasa? Then he's going to look at the vibhava. He's going to look at first the alambana vishaya, then the alambana ashraya, then the udipana. Then he's going to look at the anubhava, then the sattvika bhava, then the vyavichari bhava, then the stibhav. Just like we did in the waves of the Southern Ocean, right? The first, it's the same, he's using the same format in the same order. And if you don't remember, what are those? This Western and Northern Ocean is going to be a little difficult to follow. So again, if you're just joining us now and you haven't reviewed the Southern Ocean in a long time, I would really, really suggest that before tomorrow's class, you go to my YouTube channel and you watch that first summary, the beginning summary on the Southern Ocean. Okay, so today we're looking at the first wave. So this is Nectar Devotion, chapter 35. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 3:1, verses 1 through 51. It's basically the whole first wave. So here in the Western Ocean, Srila Rupa Goswami is going through the 5 primary stibobs. The 5 primary stibobs. That's the topic of the Western Ocean. By the way, for this class, I do expect people to come on time, to stay on time, to, if possible, prepare for the class by reading that section of the Nectar Devotion and or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu before the class. And I expect participation when we have interactive activities. What you can expect of me is that I will come on time and end on time, and that I have done my preparation work. Okay, so the first organization in each of these. So for each of these, again, he's going to have the same organization. The basic understanding of that rasa. Then he's going to go to the vibhava, vibhava vishaya, vibhava ashraya, vibhava udipana. Then he's going to go to anubhava, then sattvika bhava, then vyavichari bhava. Then he's going to look at the stibhav itself. He's going to look at the stibhav in terms of degrees, and he's going to look at the stibhav in terms of meeting and separation. This is going to be his template for each wave in the Western Ocean and also for much of the Northern Ocean. Okay, his first section is to understand Shanta Ras. What is the basic understanding of Shanta Ras? Now, as you remember, hopefully, from the Southern Ocean, we have the 5 components of rasa, and all 5 have to be there to have rasa. Those 5 components are understood separately in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. By those in prema, they're experienced together. By those in bhava, they're experienced separately. By those up to the level of bhava, they're experienced in glimpses or in reflections. So the actual devotees in prema, they're not experiencing these so much separately. Like when you mix things together, you can distinguish individual tastes to some extent. but we are looking at these 5 components separately. So the Staibhav called Shantarati. Rati is a synonym for the Staibhav, the basic relationship that you have with Krishna. That's the king of all of the other bhavas. When it mixes with Vibhava, it was stimulated, and the others, and it is relished by persons possessing Sama. This is Shanta Bhakti Rasa. Prabhupada calls this, quote, able to maintain the transcendental position. So a little review from the Southern Ocean of the neutral rasa. For reasons that I do not know, Srila Rupa Goswami in his 5th wave of the Southern Ocean goes into more depth about the neutral rasa than he does in the others. So we're going to review that here. So he talks about 3 kinds of staibhav, 3 kinds of rati in the neutral ocean. 3 kinds of rati. The rati means love, staibhav, that which stays. Prabhupada will call it continuous ecstasy. That's the basic relationship with Krishna. The basic relationship with Krishna. Now, we have the same names for the Staibhav as we have for the rasa: neutrality, servitorship, friendship, parental, and conjugal. But there's a difference between the Staibhav and the rasa. If you can think about, let's take a mundane situation, because all of this also applies to the mundane. Let's say you've given birth to a child, okay? So you have a staibhav that you're a parent to that child, that you're the father or the mother of that child. That's your staibhav. That's your basic relationship. Whether or not you experience pleasure and taste in that relationship, the other 4 elements have to be there. So in order for that staibhav to become rasa, again, we're looking at the different ingredients. In order for that staibhav to become rasa, you have to have 4 other bhavs there as well. Or if you think about, an arranged marriage. So you have the staibhav of conjugal as soon as there's a marriage, but you're not going to have rasa unless you have the other 4 elements there as well. So the staibhav is the basic relationship. So in neutrality, there are 3 possibilities of a staibhav or rati or basic relationship. One is samanya, another is swacha, and another is shanta. Okay, so what are these? Samanya is very commonly found. So most people who are experiencing some kind of sense of love for God in any religion, and please take note of this because we're going to be discussing this in our breakout group. So make a note of this. Anyone in any religion who feels some sense of love for God. I love God. Srila Rupa Goswami says that it's often found in children. It's found among the general population. It's a real feeling of love. I have some love for God. Then there's swacha. Swacha is a person has some love for God, but they kind of move between all 5 of the basic relationships. So sometimes they just see God as great. Sometimes they want to serve God. Sometimes they think of God as their friend. Sometimes they think of God as their dependent. Sometimes they think of God as their lover, but they're not really established in anything. Then Shanta is the basic relationship where they have no mamata, and this will be something we'll be really discussing today. They have no mamata. It said they have not a trace of mamata. Mamata is mine. Mine. God is my master, my dependent, my lover, etc. So these people are liberated, but they love to hear the Lord. They love to hear of him. They love to see him. So these are the 3 types of staibhavs or ratis that can be in the 5 components of rasa. These are the 3 categories of rati. But only the shanta rati can give rise to rasa. So you can't have a taste, a pleasure, and full rasa unless you have the shanta staibhav. So samanya, which again is very, very common in the world, very, very common in the world, it's too weak to really develop fully into rasa. And the swacha is too dissipated. It's too unstable to develop into rasa. So one could go from samanya or swacha to shanta, and from there to rasa. But as long as one is in samanya or swacha, the rasa can't develop, right? The other components of rasa are the vibhava, etc., which we will talk about. Okay, how does shanta rasa arise? This is the kind of thing, again, Srila Rupa Goswami, for each of the rasas, he's going to follow this same pattern. He's going to ask these same questions at the beginning of each wave. So it arises from impersonal happiness to realizing the form of the Lord, but the Lord's qualities and pastimes is not the main factor as it is with the other rasas. I mean, it is described in the Shastra that there is pleasure in impersonal realization because Brahman is also part of the Lord, but there's that pleasure of impersonalism is nothing. It's like a drop compared to a huge ocean of the pleasure of personal realization. Now, this change from impersonalism to personalism, it can actually take many, many bursts, or it can happen quickly by the grace of devotee, which we'll discuss again in the section on Vibhava Alambana Ashraya. Okay, so the Santarati realization of Krishna is in the neutral stage. The rati again is the staibhav, it's not the whole rasa. It between impersonalism and personalism. So this means one is not very attached to the personal features of the Lord. It is an appreciation of the greatness of the Lord, and generally one is attached to the Paramatma feature of this Supreme Lord. Okay, any questions on what we've discussed so far? My question that I'd like to ask of all of you is, would we say that beginners in personalism have some aspects of Shanta Ras? Would we say those who are beginners in personalism have to some extent some aspects of Shanta Ras? Or if you have any questions at all on what we've discussed so far. You can either put a question in a chat or you can raise your hand. So only Shantarati devotees exist in spiritual. Yes, correct, Gaurangi Gandharvika. Yes, exactly. Swacha or Samanya do not exist in the spiritual world. I'm assuming they could go to like Swarga. Okay, Prema Prakash, you say not at all. I'm not sure if I agree with you, but okay. Yes, who has a question here?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Mataji, a small question. You said the Shanta Rasa does not develop from attraction to qualities of the Lord. So
not as much as the other ones.
Then how does that sprout, that rasa, without having any attraction to the qualities and forms of Lord?
Form, yes.
What form, yes. From impersonal to form, yes, but not the qualities.
The form of it's not that there's no attraction to the qualities and pastimes, but it's not as developed.
Okay.
It's not as developed.
Okay.
Is that all right? It's not the main thing that's attracting them.
Okay.
I give an example. Sometimes in some of my classes, I ask people, okay, well, which pastime of the Lord are you particularly attracted to? You? Like, which pastime of the Lord would you like to see? And I have had people say to me, I've never thought about this before. You know, people who've been in the movement for years. I've never thought about this before. So I think, you know, they're attracted to Krishna. They have some taste for Krishna, but, you know, they're not that interested in the Lord's qualities or the Lord's pastimes. So it is definitely something that I run into.
Thank you, Mataji. Can you give me some example of Santarasa devotees or objects?
Well, we are going to look at some examples of devotees as soon as we get to the Ashraya section. But we have a question here. Impersonal devotees are not affiliated to Krishna's pastimes. Is that right? Yes. But here we're not talking about impersonalists. These Shanta Rasa, Santa Saibhav persons are personalists. They are not impersonalists. This is the beginning of personalism. Are the four Kumaras Shanta devotees after meeting the Lord? Yes. And we will be discussing that extensively in the Ashraya section. Examples of Samanya and Swacha. Yes. So examples of Samanya are anywhere that you find religious people who say, I love God, God is great, I want to dedicate myself to the Lord because he's so greatness, because he's so great, because he's the creator, because he's the maintainer. And they have some genuine feeling of affection and love. So this is, Srila Rupa Goswami says this is very common. Swacha devotees are on a higher level. They actually are much more aware of the five relationships with the Lord, and they meditate on devotees in each of those relationships, at which point they actually feel some of the ecstasies of those relationships. Beginners in impersonal realization are not in Shanta. No, correct. Even fully realized impersonalists are not in Shanta Ras. Can only the Shanta aspect develop into Shanta Rati and not the, no, it can only develop into Shanta Rasa. So Santa Vigraha Prabhu, you want to distinguish between the words Rati and the word Rasa. So Rati or a Staibhav, think of it if you're going to make a mango smoothie. So your mango smoothie is going to have mango, maybe it's going to have yogurt or curd. It'll have maybe some sugar, maybe you're going to put in some cardamom. So your key ingredient is mango. Your key ingredient is mango, but the mango is not the smoothie. You have to have the other ingredients there to get your mango lassi, to get your mango smoothie. So your rati or your staibhav is your basic relationship with Krishna. It only becomes rasa when the other four elements are included. Yes, Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
For example, Hare Krishna Mataji. For example, you have where people who are worshipping demigods and also they're worshipping Lord Vishnu, and they have quite a lot of. I have seen plenty in the Hindu community, lots of devotion, very devoted, doing everything ritualistically every day, but have no idea who is the real Supreme Lord, like it is explained in the Gita. Is that also considered Samanya Bhakti to some point? Some percentage of their
It
emotions,
might
devotion?
be possible, but it seems like if they're really confusing the demigods with the Lord, then I would say no. I mean, we have the example of Atri Muni, who was worshiping the Lord without
Mm.
having any idea of who he was. And he was just like, I'm worshiping you, but I don't know who you are. In that case, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu all showed up. So it's possible that that could be the case if they actually have some real devotion.
They are the
Okay,
category of Bahudo Vishnu. Yep.
yes, yes. We're going to go into breakout rooms right now. We have 10 minutes for the breakout room. And what I want you to be discussing is the importance of these three aspects of the neutral rasa in our preaching. In our preaching. So this Samanya, Swacha, and Shanta, what value is knowing this in our preaching? And if you have time, also to look at what is the value of this neutral ras for our devotees. So you have 10 minutes. Okay, I hope that that was helpful. Okay, now we're going to look at the Vibhava for the neutral rasa. So Vibhava means what stimulates it. What stimulates it. Mundane example, you have a relationship or friendship with someone, that's your staibhav, your basic relationship. What stimulates that relationship? And we have different categories of vibhava. We have what Srila Prabhupada calls basic, alambana, and udipana or impelling. So basic is your object of love. You have a friend, you're friends with Krishna Das. So Krishna Das is your vishaya, he's your object of love. Ashraya are other people who are also friends with Krishna Das. And Udipana is all variety of things like Krishna Das's voice, Krishna Das's mridanga playing, Krishna Das's laugh, Krishna Das's shoes, that can all bring out your feeling of friendship. Can you please mute yourself? You're running the water and you need to mute. Thank you very much. All right. So the Vibhava for the neutral ras alambana is basic. And we're looking at the Vishaya and the Ashraya. So the Vishaya is your object of love. So for all of the primary staibhavs, for all the primary rasas, the Vishaya is always going to be Krishna. That will generally be true for the 7 secondary ones, except not ghastly and not some of the anger. The object is Krishna. Who are you loving? You're loving Krishna. He's your object of love. But there's going to be different manifestations of Krishna that's going to be your object. Your Ashraya are the other devotees who have a similar relationship to Krishna that you have, a similar relationship to Krishna that you have. So the Vishaya in Shanta Rasa, the Vishaya, the object of love, which is stimulating your love, right? Right? In this world, if you're in love with your wife is your object. She's the one bringing out your love for your wife. You're in love with your husband, he's the object. You're in love with your child is the object. You're in love with your friend is the object. The object of your love stimulates your love. So the Vishaya, the form of the Lord that is most attractive to the Atmaramas is Paramatma, the Param Brahman, free from passions, tolerant, pure, sense-controlled, eternally fixed in spiritual form, who rewards even the enemies he kills, and who is greater than the whole universe. So those are certainly qualities. It's not that those in Shantaras don't have any attraction to the Lord's qualities. It's that they're particularly attracted to those qualities. So you remember in the Southern Ocean where Srila Rupa Goswami lists the 64 qualities, then he lists additional qualities, then we look at 16 so-called faults that can also be qualities, Krishna's personality. So that's the full spectrum of Krishna as the Vishaya. Those in Shantaras are particularly attracted to these qualities of the Lord. And again, if you think about most religious people in the world who have some personal conception of God, what are the qualities that particularly inspire them? Now, Ashraya is again the impetus. Ashraya means the other devotees who have a similar basic relationship with you. So, mundane example, you love your child, the other parent is the Ashraya. So your child is the Vishaya, the other parent, and maybe your sisters and brothers who are aunties and uncles to your child are Ashraya, right? You're friends with somebody, your mutual friends are Ashraya. They stimulate your relationship for your friendship. So the Ashraya here are devotees and self-realized persons who are engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord, always maintain an ecstatic love for the Lord within their hearts. Thus, they are benefited by the rays of the ecstatic moon, and they are called saintly persons. This is a quote from Nectar of Devotion. These are the devotees who are Ashraya. These are the devotees who inspire this love for the Lord. So again, let's think about in our Hare Krishna movement, if somebody is inspired in love for Krishna in a neutral way, who's going to be inspiring them among the devotees? These kinds of persons, the saintly persons. So there are two ways of becoming an Ashraya. Now, why is this important? Because these are two kinds of Ashraya for the Shanta Bhaktas. Now, those of you who remember from the Southern Ocean, the Ashrayas in general are those who are perfect and those who are sadhakas, those who are practicing. Those who are perfect, those who are eternally perfect, the Nityasiddhas, those who become perfect through mercy, those who become perfect through sadhana. Among the sadhakas, it's only those who've realized something of their eternal relationship with Krishna. So let's say you're in the Hare Krishna movement, you're a sadhaka, you're not siddha, you're not perfect, you're still practicing Krishna consciousness, and you start developing this neutral love of God. So God himself in his greatness, his equanimity, he's your object of love. And the other people who inspire you are going to be people who are either already perfect in Shantaras or those who are practitioners of Santaras. So here's the two ways that those who've attained, here we're looking at the Siddha devotees and two kind of paths So one is the Atmarama, who've attained Rati for Krishna. Rati is your Staibhav, your basic relationship, due to the mercy of Krishna and his dear devotees and performers of austerities who have developed firm faith in the path of bhakti. So here you have these two divisions of siddhas. You have the Kripa siddhas and the sadhana siddhas. So one is inspired. Oh, look, that other person, they're attaining pure love for God. They've attained pure love of God through mercy. They've attained pure love of God through sadhana. Now, in this case, though, we're looking at, as we talked about earlier, there's always some mercy, even for the sadhana siddhas, and there's always, or almost always, some practice for the kripa siddhas. Okay, so we're going to look first at those who've attained to Shantaras through mercy. The Atmarama Shanta Bhaktas who've attained Shantarasa through mercy, and here the prime example is the four Kumaras. What you're going to notice in this Western Ocean is that for each time Srila Rupa Goswami discusses the ashraya for a particular rasa, he's going to usually focus on one example. Sometimes he'll list two or three examples, but then he's going to focus on one example. That doesn't mean those are the only ashraya for that ras, but he's giving a general category and then he gives a specific example. Okay, so the form of this, and again, he's going to do this in each wave. He's going to give an ashraya, he's going to describe their form, he's going to describe some of their qualities, something about them. So he's following, Srila Rupa Goswami is following a pattern here. So the form of the four Kumaras, these great saints have been living for millions of years now, but still they appear to be just like boys of 4 or 5 years. Their complexions are very fair, there's an effulgence in their bodies, and they always travel naked. These four saintly persons almost always remain together. Okay, now he's going to look at the bhakti of these. Again, this is his pattern. The bhakti of this ashraya, of the Shanta Bhaktas. Oh, Lord Mukunda, only so long as one does not happen to see your eternal form of bliss and knowledge, appearing just like a newly grown tamal tree with a bluish hue, can the impersonal feature of the absolute truth known as Brahman be very pleasing to a saintly person. So this is describing the bhakti. Now we're going to look at the other category of ashraya. The other category of ashraya are the sadhana siddhas in Shantaras. Now, why is this important to us as devotees? So we're going to read about how Prabhupada says that we generally have to experience Shantarasa before we can experience the other rasas. And in order to experience a rasa, we have to have some stimulus. We have to have some meditation on the Lord, and we have to meditate on the devotees like that as well. So this is not just some sort of theoretical understanding. So the tapasya shanta bhaktas, those who've gone through austerities, those who worship the Lord while practicing yukta vairagya without giving up the desire for liberation, since obstacles to bhakti are destroyed by attaining liberation. So this is interesting because it means that they're saying, well, if I can get liberated, then I won't have any obstacles to my bhakti. Let me just answer this one other question in the chat. Okay, another example of the Tapasya Shanta Bhakta. When shall I be able to live alone in a cave? This is their qualities. When shall I wear only undergarments? When shall I be satisfied by eating a little fruit and vegetables? When will it be possible for me to think always of the lotus feet of Mukunda, who is the source of the Brahman effulgence? When shall I understand my days and nights to be insignificant moments in eternal time? So those of us who want to develop in Shantarasa, we want to meditate on and associate with people who have this kind of mood. By the way, we just want to note that Prahlad Maharaj is a prime example of someone in dasya, or servitorship. And he says, I don't want to live alone in a cave. I want to preach. So here you find this difference in mood. Okay, so we're still in Vibhava. We're looking now at the Udipana section of Vibhava, which general stimulus. So we have the Lord, the devotees with a similar mentality and general stimulus. So each of the rasas is going to have different things. In the Southern Ocean, Shilupa Goswami lists the general udipanas for everyone. Krishna's flute, Krishna's peacock feather, his ankle bells, his garlands, his clothes. But there's going to be particular things that really stimulate love in each of the different rasas, right? So what really brings out, what's an udipana? Udipana means a light. What really brings out the light? Hearing the principal Upanishads, living in a solitary place, the appearance of pure mental functions like, whoa, now I really feel love for Krishna. Contemplating the truth, putting emphasis on the power of knowledge, visualizing the universal form, associating with Gyan Mijra Bhaktas, and discussing the Upanishad with similar persons. We might find that at our stage in bhakti, these are the kind of things that encourage us in love, right? And I'm sure we certainly know people like this. So udipanas, here Srila Rupa Goswami is talking about the two different kinds of people who attain Shanta Bhav. One is contemplating the truth, emphasizing the power of knowledge, and seeing the universal form are the special stimuli for those in austerities, and the rest are stimulus for both the Atmaramas and the Tapasyas. So because you're not supposed to be interacting with the outside world, right? Pratyadhara, you're withdrawing the senses. Therefore, the internal sense is acting as a stimulus. Well, maybe. Okay. So the 9 Yogindra's hair stood on end. They developed a great desire to meet the members of the Yadu dynasty when they heard the Upanishads in the assembly of Brahma. So they heard the Upanishads and they're like, wow, we want to see the Lord. These are udipanas for both. The fragrance of the tulsi at the lotus feet of the Lord, the sound of the Lord's conch, the river Ganga, all of these stimulate ecstatic love. Specifically for the performers of austerities, not the Atmaramas, are holy mountains, holy forests, holy places. The temporary nature of this world. Now, this is an interesting one, being victorious over the dictations of bodily demands and the power of time to destroy everything. All of these are stimulus for love. Maybe some of this we find stimulate our love. Yes. The aroma of Tulsi, although these 4 saintly persons were always absorbed in the thoughts of impersonal Brahman, from association with the Lord and from smelling the Tulsi leaves, the hairs on their bodies immediately stood up. Okay, we have a little bit of time for a general discussion. So I'm wondering, in which way are these aspects of Vibhava useful in our preaching or for ourselves? Any thoughts on that? This discussion on Vibhava for Shantaras, how could this be useful in our preaching or for ourselves? Yes, Praneshwari Lakshmi, or any other questions that you have.
I'm just thinking that since most people are, a lot of the traditions now, Catholic Christian religion traditions, they have a lot of this more, the grandness of God, that whole, that kind of a mood. It might be something that would be attractive to them, that we also do believe in. Some people may be a little offended by the whole, oh my gosh, you want to have a personal relationship with God? I mean, that's so. So this kind of understanding would be something that they would be more easily acceptable for them, I would think.
Right. I mean, this is a personal relationship. It is, and we'll talk about that at the end of today's session. Is this actually a rasa? But it isn't personal. It's not impersonal. But it isn't a very active personal relationship. Yes, Rati Manjari
Yes.
Priya.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Pronouns to everyone. Mataji, for this Vibhava of Shanta, you can relate Vedanta Sutra with Srimad Bhagavatam and tell them the importance how the Lord has formed, explaining through the Vedic scriptures, the Upanishad, are quoted in Vedanta Sutra. So you correlate Srimad Bhagavatam with Vedanta Sutra, and that's how you know the importance of the personality of the Lord. The Lord is a
Mm,
person. So that will help
okay.
them to come. Thank you, Mataji.
Very nice. I like that insight. Thank you. Okay, Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
I'm having a hard time reconciling. How is it possible to have pure mental functions on sadhan bhakti? Isn't that more to bhava bhakti stage, where we have reached at least nishta, ruchi, and nishta, or and ashakti,
Yes, so this is
beginning part?
talking about sadhana siddhas. So the two categories of the ashraya given here were kripa siddhas and sadhana siddhas. And those siddhas are going to be enlivened by their pure mental function. It's one of the things that enlivens them in their bhakti. Now, there is also the category of sadhakas who are not siddhas who can act as ashraya. Uh, in this Western Ocean, Srila Rupa Goswami doesn't usually give those as examples. So he's given that in the Southern Ocean as one category of ashraya, but he doesn't mention them. He only mentions siddhas when he goes through the Western Ocean. So these are all siddhas. Yes, Santa Vigraha Prabhu.
One thing that comes to mind on a personal application is becoming free from being controlled excessively by bodily demands.
Mm,
Like I find that useful, like in terms of gauging my own practice, things that were very troublesome in the past becoming less so and becoming attracted by persons who would have developed or demonstrated that type of control in their own life. And in terms of preaching, like I'm thinking appreciation for others who may exhibit bhakti but not necessarily come from our own tradition.
mm, yes. Yes, very nice. Very nice. Thank you. Maybe if the VIHE people, could you move around the spotlight for whoever is talking? That would be helpful. Okay, Pulastamuni Prabhu. Nice to see so many of you, by the way.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare-
I think this kind of rasa is very important. In many ways, it's something that we should always have when we relate to the public. Because the other rasas, they're very private. They cannot be displayed. They can be experienced, maybe, but not
Mm,
in public. So I think that although some devotees might look down to this type of rasa because there's not so much variety in terms of like emotions, experience. Although the emotions are there, but not as close as the other rasas. But in any case, for preachers, this is a must. It should always be
mm,
employed. Although the other rasas should be experienced, but not displayed, because they could be fake. Also, it could only be a show, so they
mm.
cannot be displayed. Prabhupada apparently uh, used to display some emotions in terms of rasa, but it was very rare. There is a recording, I think it's called "I Think Your Temple is the Best." I think it's in
Yes, yes, yes.
Atlanta or somewhere where
Atlanta, yeah.
Prabhupada was crying when he was talking about Gauranitai, basically. But those were rare occurrences. Like so, I think this rasa in itself is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to have to go on, but I just want to make one point that I think in our preaching, in our classes, in our preaching, Prabhupada's preaching, we use a lot of these udipanas, the temporary nature of time, the importance of controlling the mind and the body. I mean, we're using these udipanas to try to stimulate people to love Krishna. So it's something that we're using all the time. Okay, I'm sorry that I have to go on. I can't always take everything. The Upanishad, sure, we study the Isha Upanishad. Okay, now we're going to look at the Anubhava. Anubhava is how you intentionally, with intelligence, express your love for Krishna. Almost everything in the Hare Krishna movement that we call service would be in the category of Anubhava. Anubhava, anu means to follow. So when your basic relationship is stimulated by the vibhava, it expresses itself as anubhava. And the categories are without strong bodily movement and with strong bodily movement. So the particular anubhavas of the Shanta rasa are concentrating their eyesight at the tip of the nose, behaving just like an avaduta, a highly elevated mystic who does not care for any social, religious, or Vedic conventions. So these are very common behaviors. And here he's going to give examples of these. The sage in front of us walked about while glancing at the tip of the nose, while raising and lowering his head. By this it appears that the Lord had entered into his heart. This is a quote from Nectar of Devotion. Srila Jiva Goswami says, raising and lowering the head is a special anubhava for this type of person. The Shanta Bhakta glances only 2 meters in front of him as he walks, rather than glancing everywhere. In other words, he's not getting distracted. Another anubhava is very careful to step forward when giving speeches and joining the hands like this when they speak. In the Jnana Mudra, so this is their anubhav, their express, how they show love for the Lord. Oh, we could just talk about this. Is this service? Is this dasya? They're doing this. Yes, there is some service, but it's more appreciating the greatness of the Lord and not because they think the Lord needs service. So although there is some service in Shantaras, there has to be some service. There has to be some service. Anubhav is service. But it's not in the mood that I am the Lord's servant, because the Lord is great. He's great. He doesn't need my service. So it's not in the mood. Dasya Bhav, you're thinking the Lord actually needs my service. So again, anubhavs of the neutral rasa, they're not against the atheists and not particularly inclined to the devotees. They're neutral. They give stress to liberation and detachment from the materialistic way of life, always neutral and have no affection or for nor misidentification with anything material. You can think of how many verses in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam emphasize this type of mentality, this neutralness to friends and enemies and so forth. Always grave, fully absorbed in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again, is this a service? I'm meditating on the Lord not to serve him. Their mood is that I'm not trying to serve him. Okay, so the type of anubhavas in general that Srila Rupa Goswami lists from the Southern Ocean, whether they don't require much bodily movement or a lot, and looking at them in yawning, stretching the limbs, instructing on devotional service, offering obeisances, offering prayers. Again, these are services. Anubhavas are service, but they're not considered dasya because one doesn't have this mood that I need to serve the Lord. Here's an example of yawning. O Yogindra, certainly the sun of Bhava must have risen in the sky of your heart, for your lotus mouth is now blossoming with a yawn. Okay. Any questions on any of the anubhavas? Any questions or discussions on the anubhavas for Shanta?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yes, Shravaniya. Yes. Shravaniya first.
Mataji, just the last one. O Yogindra, who's O Yogindra again?
Yog Indra. So the
Yeah.
master of all yoga. Sometimes we call Krishna Yogeshwar. In this case, it's Yogindra.
Oh, so they're referring to Krishna.
Yes. Yes. Lovely question. Thank you, sir. Nikunja Mandari, you had a question?
Mataji, I just got confused with yawning. If you can explain, I didn't. How is this one of the anubhava or a service?
It's funny, we talked about this in the Southern Ocean classes, that there was one devotee there from Spain, and she said that in Spain it's understood sometimes when you love someone, you yawn. You like your face blossoms in joy. Oh, Krishna. You have a kind of a yawning or expansion? Lovely, lovely question. Anyone else have any we have something in the chat. Yes. Okay, so we're going to take a break right now. We want to take a 10-minute break, and please take a real break. Get away from your phone, get away from your computer, drink some water, take a walk, do something where you take a real break. Welcome back. So now following again, Srila Rupa Goswami's program, how he discusses things. It's the same order as the waves in the Southern Ocean. He's going to look at the sattvic bhavs that are in the neutral rasa. So a review from the Southern Ocean of what is a sattvic bhav. So the heart becomes overwhelmed by ratis, by one's basic relationship with Krishna, either directly in one of the primary sthai-bhavs, which is what we're studying in the Western Ocean, or the secondary sthai-bhavs, which we'll study in the Northern Ocean, and that produces a state called sattva in the heart. This state called, it's not sattva gun, this state called sattva then manifests as anubhavs, voluntary service one is doing, and sattvika bhavs, or involuntary service. Now the word sat, twa means ness, sat means good, true, real, existence, which is I think why Srila Prabhupada translate this as existential ecstasy. So this sattva transforms the body. Again, think of a mundane relationship. So you have some feeling of friendship for someone when that's stimulated by being with them and being with mutual friends, and you're having fun together. You get this state in your heart, this feeling of like, oh, love, and it wants to express itself. It wants to express itself voluntarily in anubhavs, which give relief from this built-up emotion, and it expresses itself involuntarily in sattvika bhavs. So these are the 8 sattvika bhavs in general. Paralysis, being stunned, perspiring, hair standing on end, choked voice, trembling, changing color, crying, and fainting. So these sattvika bhavs do exist in the Shantaras. So these symptoms of ecstasy do exist in the Shantaras. All of them do exist except for fainting. So there's no fainting. So internally, all the senses can stop. The action and knowledge senses stop, but the person doesn't fall on the ground. So this is different from paralysis where a person becomes just like a stick. Fainting is falling over. So they don't fall over, but it's as if they've fallen over without falling over. This is from Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary. Srila Rupa Goswami gives an example of just one of them. He gives an example of horripilation or hair standing on end. The sound of the Panchajanya Kanch, remember that was in Udipana, the Kanch, agitated the hearts of the yogis living in the mountain caves. It broke their samadhi and made their hair stand on end. Oh, there's Krishna playing his Kanch. So the sattvika bhavs can increase in intensity. This is a review from the Southern Ocean. So they can be smoky. There's just 1 or 2 slight sattvika bhavs which you can conceal. Luminous, 2 or 3, you can conceal them with difficulty. 3 to 5 that you cannot conceal. 5 or more that you can't conceal. And then intense in Mahabhava. So the only ones that exist in Shanta Rasa are these 2. So only these 2, which I think relates to Pulastamuni's point about, because these can be concealed. These ecstasies can be concealed. And in the Shantaras, you don't have these ecstasies that can't be concealed. So you can have just Dumata and Dwalita, but not Deepta. Okay, any questions about these sattvika bhavs in Shanta Ras? Any questions on the sattvika bhavs? Yes, Rati Manjari Priya.
Thank you, Mataji. This is a previous question in which the Kumaras are viewing, they're having the vision of Lord Vishnu, So,
Yes.
do these Shanta devotees actually see Lord in the form of Vishnu, or they're seeing Lord Krishna in the two-armed form? I mean, what is their Udipana? Just
Okay, very nice.
curious.
That
Thank
would
you.
be their Vishaya, not Udipana. Vishaya is their object of love. So Udipana are other qualities that of, like, say, Krishna's flute, Krishna's conch shell. Generally, the way it's described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Shantaras is described only in relationship to Lord Narayana and not in relationship to Krishna. However, Shantaras is described in relationship to Krishna in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Krishna book, in the Bhagavatam, and in other places. And we will mention that. We mentioned that in the Southern Ocean classes, and we will mention that also today, how there is Shantaras in relationship to Krishna. But in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself, Srila Rupa Goswami is only describing Shantaras with Narayana as the Vishaya. And one could extrapolate, any form of the Lord, obviously. So, but as I say, Srila Rupa Goswami just focuses on Narayana. But there is Shantaras with Krishna, yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions on Sattvika Bhav specifically, or anything else we've discussed so far? Ram Yagya Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Mataji. So does Paramatma also have like a spiritual form, which is like the four-handed form? Because you were showing picture before.
Yes, so the devotees in this world may focus primarily on the Paramatma, but if, when they attain to the spiritual world, they're going to see Lord Narayana. And again, if you think about how common Samanya Shanta Staibhav is, God as the creator, God as the maintainer, God as the witness, kind of thing. Okay, we have something in the chat. The mundane example of Sattvika Bhav to relate. Oh, sure. Mundane example of Sattvika Bhav would be you see a wonderful sunrise and you're filled with wonder and your hair stand on end. Or you see your beloved child performing on stage and wonderfully, and you start crying in happiness. Your husband is coming back from being in the military, and when you hear that he's coming home, you start trembling in excitement. So these would be mundane examples of Sattvika Bhavs in various rasas. If you're going to talk about just in Shanta rasa on a mundane level, somebody goes to see some pop star that they worship, and they start trembling in excitement and their hair stand on end, and maybe they can't even move for a minute because they're so much entranced by this rock star. Shravaniya, yes.
Mataji, the mother who is in ecstasy for her child, isn't that Vatsalya? Even if it's in
Yes,
mundane.
I was going through all of the rasas, not just Shanta. Yes.
Oh, okay,
I was
thanks.
getting mundane examples of all the rasas, and then I thought, oh, I should just pick Shanta. So then I went to Shanta with the rock star. Thanks for clarifying.
Thanks.
So now the Vyavichari Bhavs for the Santa rasa. The Vyavichari Bhavs are moving emotions. Prabhupada sometimes calls them aggressive ecstasy. These are moving emotions. So they come out of the ocean of the Staibhav, they affect it, and then they go back into that ocean. So that they don't leave a lasting impression. They're from various causes. There's an in-depth analysis of Yavichari Bhavs in the Southern Ocean. They're in relation to primary and secondary Staibhavs. They have different stages. They have different combinations. They have different degrees of strength. Again, these are described in detail in the Southern Ocean. And if we're going to look at it in terms of a chart, so we have the Staibhav, the Rati. Okay, so a person has, my love for Krishna is that he's great, he's wonderful, he's peaceful. That's the basic connection, the Staibhav. Then you have, what we don't have here is the Vibhav. So it's going to be acted upon by the Vibhav. Krishna himself, the other devotees, Krishna blowing his conch shell, then the various emotions of the Vyavachari bhavs mixed with the basic relationship to make this state in the heart called sattva, which is not sattva gun, which results in the anubhavas, the voluntary actions, and the sattvika bhavas, or the involuntary actions. The only piece we do not have here in this particular chart is the vibhavas. So the emotions or the feelings are not exactly voluntary or involuntary. They're the cause of the voluntary, and they're the cause of the involuntary. Let's think of, again, a very ordinary, mundane example in Shanta, mundane Shanta. You have some musician that you want to see, some entertainer, you're going to their concert, and your basic feeling is just awe and reverence. Oh, look at that musician. And as your musician goes to walk on the stage, and the musician is, of course, your Vishaya, your object, the other fans in the audience are the Ashraya. The way the musician is walking are the Udipanas, the lights flashing, that's all Udipanas. And then you feel some emotion. You feel joy. You feel anticipation. Maybe you feel anxiety. You feel all different sorts of emotions that are coming and going. And this produces some state in the heart, which results in a voluntary action. Maybe you start screaming, yo, my rock star. And maybe your hairs stand on end. So that's a mundane example. Okay, we have in the chat example of Shantabhakta feeling ecstasy and seeing Krishna Kurukshetra. Yes, he explains the happiness experience. Okay, so there is one example. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me, Shantavigraha. As my godbrother Vaisheshika Prabhu says, I live to be corrected. And it's so nice. I was asking one of my godbrothers yesterday to do something, and he said, I live to be corrected. And I was saying to Krishna, Krishna, when will I have the next opportunity to say that I live to be corrected? And now Krishna provided one. Okay, so Shantavigraha Prabhu, thank you for correcting me that in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Sri Rupa Goswami is giving an example of Shantaras in relationship to Krishna, which I had forgotten about in 3.140. Thank you, most appreciated. Okay, so these emotions or feelings of the Vyavichari bhavs, some of the words to describe the Vyavichari bhavs may sound like Sattvika bhavs, some might sound like Anubhavs, because sometimes it's hard to differentiate the emotions from the action, right? So sometimes it's a little difficult. So these are the 33 Vyavichari bhavs. We're not going to go through them all right now. These are gone through all in the Southern Ocean in depth. And here in the Shanta Bhat Rasa, so here there's 33 altogether, but these are the only ones that actually show up in the Shanta Rasa. Disappointment, endurance, jubilation, thoughtfulness, despair, eagerness, intense emotion, which is kind of a catch-all phrase, and argumentativeness. So these particularly, see again, argumentativeness, you say, was that a feeling or is that an action? It's a little hard, right? That the feeling of being argumentative is the Vyavichari bhav. Actually starting to argue would be an Anubhav. Okay, here's an example of disappointment. Though Krishna Paramatma, the form of concentrated bliss, resides in Dwarka, was another example of Krishna, not Vishnu. I am so unfortunate thinking myself an Atmarama. I have wasted so much time. So Krishna's right there, and I've just been wasting my time. So here's an explanation of disappointment. In other words, the sage lamented because the Supreme Personality of God was personally present, but still he could not take advantage because of his meditation. He was so involved in meditation that I was just meditating on Krishna. So I'm so disappointed in myself that I couldn't go see Krishna. This is not self-abnegation. This is not low self-esteem. This is not tamagun. This is a love. Okay, looking at the sthai bhav itself. So again, you're going to see this repeating pattern for each wave of the Western Ocean. That first Srila Rupa Goswami is just going to give a real general thing about the sthai bhav and the rasa. Then he's going to go into the Vibhav. He's going to have the specificity of the object, the Vishaya, specificity of the similar devotees, the Ashraya, specificity of the Udipanas, some specificity of the Anubhavs, the specific services they do, specificity of the specific Sattvic bhavs, the involuntary activities they do, some specificity of their Brahmachari bhavs, and then he's going to talk about the sthai bhav itself. He's going to talk about varieties of the sthai bhav. With servitorship, we're going to have 3 classes on servitorship because there's so many varieties of the sthai bhav. So varieties of the sthai bhav, degrees of the sthai bhav, how intense it can be, and the meeting and the separation. So types of the sthai bhav, degrees of it, meeting and separation. This is what you're going to find for each of the rasas. Okay, so the other rasas have degrees of prema. The other rasas have degrees of prema. However, here we really not talking about degrees of prema. In fact, sometimes it's explained that it's not full prema like the other rasas. Okay. So there's what's called the ordinary and the intense. Sama and Sandra are the degrees. You can have ordinary rasa and you can have intense. And each of the rasas, there's intensity. So like, for example, in other rasas, there might be prema, then sneha, then raga, and so forth. Okay, here's shama, the ordinary. I mean, it's not ordinary. This is love of God. When I playfully revealed myself to the yogi absorbed in asa pragnata samadhi, realization of Brahman with no function of the mind, his body began to shake to the extreme. So when the Lord revealed himself to a Brahman realized yogi, and he started having this sattvika bhava of trembling when he experienced this rati. And then intense. Devotee says, in nirvikalpa samadhi, after destroying all ignorance, I experienced complete bliss. But when I saw Krishna directly, the bliss became thousands of times more concentrated, so intensified. And here's another example of intensified. My dear friend, do you think that after I perfect the 8-fold yoga performance, I shall be able to see the eternal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? This is intense hankering. Okay, now we're looking at separation and meeting, which in the neutral rasa is just described as hidden or visible. Hidden, the Lord, you can't see the Lord. You're seeing the Lord in the heart. Seeing the Lord in the heart. Visible, you're seeing him in front of you. So this is separation and meeting as applied to the Shanta ras. In the other rasas, we're going to have kinds. It's going to be a lot more complex. There's going to be separation before ever meeting, separation after having met one time, meeting for the first time, meeting after a separation, eternal meeting, separation due to distance, separation due to anger. There's going to be all different varieties. In Shantaras, it's very simple. Either you're seeing Krishna or you're not. So example of hidden, and this is a quote from Nectar of Devotion. O Lord of the sages, tell me if my great austerities and my long practice of Astanga Yoga will bear fruit. Will that Param Brahma in human form with the complexion of a new rain cloud ever appear before me and bring astonishment to my eyes? So, of course, this could be, if we didn't have the sentence of austerities and long practice of Astanga Yoga, and we didn't have the Param Brahma, this could be an example in any rasa. When will I see the Lord? This could be an example of the Purvarag separation. When will I see the Lord? But because specifically we're talking about austerities, Astanga Yoga, and the Supreme Lord, Param Brahma, the Supreme Lord, this is definitely in Shanta. Okay, so this is similar in the other rasas to purvarag, to separation before a first meeting. Okay, this next one is similar in the other rasas to separation after meeting. You meet and then you separate. So this is another example of hidden. Now that I remember that effulgence that conquers the complexion of a new rain cloud, which I saw at Kurukshetra at the time of the eclipse of the sun, my restless mind no longer experiences bliss in the impersonal Brahman as it did previously. So I saw Krishna at Kurukshetra. Now I'm not seeing him anymore. And I can't get into Brahman anymore because I'm so ecstatic thinking about Krishna Kurukshetra that I just can't do it with Brahman. So this is again the sort of equivalent in the other rasas to you've met Krishna and then there's separation. Okay, then seeing the Lord. So this is meeting. O Bhagavan, because you are filled with more bliss than the Brahman, being the supreme soul, and because I have experienced intense bliss from seeing you directly, what is the necessity of realizing the impersonal Brahman? So we've got some Vyavichari Bhavs in this also. Another example of seeing the Lord. When a great mystic was awakened from his trance by hearing Krishna's Panchajanya Kancho, you remember that's Nudipana, the mystic became overpowered and began to bash his head on the ground, definitely an Anubhava, with eyes full of tears, that's a Sattvika Bhava. He violated all the rules and regulations of his yoga performances. Thus, he at once neglected the process of Brahman realization. Srila Jiva Goswami says he couldn't follow the previous rules. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that as we advance in bhakti, the rules for the previous step act as chains around our feet if we can't give them up. The rules change as we advance. Okay. So one little note here is that the Vyavichari Bhavs of disappointment or endurance can be a neutral sthai bhav instead of a Vyavichari Bhav if arisen from knowledge of the absolute truth instead of from losing or hating material things. So you're generally disappointment or endurance, they're coming from the mundane sphere, but if they're coming from the Lord, they can be either a Vyavichari Bhav or they can be part of the sthai bhav. Okay, now we looked before, and I want you to try to be able to distinguish this. It's an important distinguishment. Distinguishment. I don't know if that's a word. Distinction. There we go. Important distinction. So we looked at the ashraya. Who stimulates our sthai bhav of Santa Rasa? Who's the stimulus? Is the ashraya. And as we said, in general, the ashraya can be someone who's liberated or a sadhaka. It has to be an advanced sadhaka. It has to be a majjhima, advanced sadhaka who's realized something of their sthai bhav. It can't be a kanista because the person has to have a similar sthai bhav. So they have to have realized that they're in Shanta Rasa. They're in neutral love of God. And those who are perfect can be the eternally perfect, the perfect by mercy, the perfect by sadhana, or those who are sadhakas. Now, the only examples of ashrayas that Sri Rupa Goswami gave were the Kripa cities and the sadhana cities. Remember the Kripa cities like the four Kumaras and the sadhana cities like someone doing yoga. Now here he's talking, so what we're talking about here could be related to the ashraya. In other words, those who've achieved Shanta Rasa are also going to be the ashraya for those who achieve Santa Rasa. But here we're in the sthai bhav section of this rasa, so we're not in the ashraya section, although all of these people could also be and would be ashrayas. I hope that that's clear. So this is, how do you get to this sthai bhav? How do you awaken this rati? How do you awaken this love for Krishna? What's the process? So one is it comes from Gyan Nishto, by mercy. And here's Bilvamangala Thakur. He says, let the impersonalists be engaged in this is a quote from Nectar of Devotion, be engaged in transcendental realization by worshiping the impersonal Brahman. Although I was also initiated into that path of Brahman realization, I've now become misled by a naughty boy, one who is very cunning, who is very much attached to the gopis. Well, here's also Krishna, and who has made me his maidservant. So I have now forgotten the process of Brahman realization. So he's an example of an impersonalist who attained Shantaras through impersonalism. Now, later on, Bilvamangala Thakur appears to enter into Madhurya Ras. Shanta Ras is often a stepping stone. So for some jivas, it's their permanent relationship with Krishna. For others, it's a interim stage. And in fact, Prabhupada says that everybody has to go through this interim stage of Santa Rasa. Okay, here's another example by Mercy. Sukadeva Goswami reformed himself by the grace of the Lord and took to the path of devotional service, giving up the way of impersonal realization. So again, he was impersonally realized and he became established in Shanta Ras by mercy. Now, of course, as we talked about, mercy is usually connected to some sort of behavior. I mean, here he's hearing the Bhagavatam in the womb for Bilvamangala Thakur. He was definitely performing some sadhana, but mostly he got mercy through Chintamani. Okay, now I find this particular point to be extremely fascinating and very, very relevant to our own devotional life and very, very relevant to our preaching. So we're not going to run into that many people who are Brahman realized. I mean, I have run into some, but that's going to be an exception, that we're going to run into Brahman realized people who then, by some kind of mercy, attain Shantaras. And we're also not going to run into that many yogis, accomplished yogis, that by their Asanga Yoga sadhana end up achieving Shantaras. That we're not going to run into very much. But these kind of people we're going to run into a lot. So in the secondary staibad, the secondary rati of chivalry. So usually we think about chivalry as, the cowherd boys fighting with Krishna or Bhishma fighting with Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. That is one of 4 subcategories of Vira Rasa. So one category of Vira Rasa is you want to fight with Krishna, not as an enemy. And think about, that we want to play games with our family members, competitive games. You go to the tennis court with your brother and you play a game of tennis. So you're fighting, but it's a friendly fight. It's a loving fight. But there are 3 other categories of Vira Ras, and those are people who are doing dharma, who are there. I'm going to follow my dharma. That's a sense of chivalry. I'm going to do what's right. Those who give in charity. Again, I'm a hero. I'm giving in charity. And those who do compassionate work, those who are helping others with compassion. These are 3 subcategories of Vira Rasa. Those who want to follow their dharma, those who are full of compassion, and those who want to give in charity. Now, we will note that Krishna in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says that everybody should give in charity, even the great souls. Everybody should do austerities and everybody should engage in yajna. So, and Krishna's telling, although Krishna does say sarva dharma and parityajya, he's saying give up dharma in the sense of being the doer, because he's telling Arjuna, do your dharma and fight, and then he says give up your dharma. How does that compatible? But it means give up the sense of being the doer. Ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate. If you're following the dharma, giving in charity, or doing compassionate work out of the sense that I am giving in charity, I am following my dharma, I am doing compassionate work, that's not going to take you anywhere. It's just going to give you a human body, a rich or powerful human body, maybe a deva, but that's not going to bring you to pure love of God. However, if one is thinking, I'm doing this to please the Lord, I'm doing this to please the Lord, it can bring you to Shantaras. And we will find that all of the religions of the world encourage this type of behavior. So all the religions of the world encourage people, do your duty, be a responsible person, give in charity, and be helpful to others to please the Lord. So if one does that, it can bring one to this Shanta Rasa, if you have no ego involved in it. Okay, then the question is asked, this question will be asked of Dasya Rasa also. Is neutrality really a rasa? So there might be some challenge to this. So answers given. Yes, Sri Rupa Goswami is going to establish, spoiler alert, he's going to establish that yes, Shantaras is a rasa. Yes. So neutrality can be described as not differentiating between oneself and God, a state that impedes rasa. So you can say if you're neutral, you think God and I are one. But the neutral rasa has both oneness and difference. So I was reading an article by this one person, he's passed away. He was a scholar who definitely achieved Brahman realization and then Shanta Rasa. And he was saying that you can describe having a oneness with God, or you can describe bowing down before and surrendering to the divinity. And he said, these are not stages. It's not that first you see the oneness and then you bow down, or first you bow down and then you see the oneness. He says they both exist simultaneously. And I thought, okay, so he's actually achieved this in Shantaras. Yes, you have some sense of oneness with God, but you also are bowing down before him. You are meditating on him. You are preaching about him. You are chanting his glories and so forth. Okay, this is a quote from Majid 19:211. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructing Srila Rupa Goswami. When one is fully attached to Krishna's lotus feet, one attains the samatha stage. This word samatha is derived from the word sama, therefore shanta ras, the position of neutrality, means being fully attached to the lotus feet of Krishna. This is the verdict from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. This state is called self-realization. This is from the purport. So the Lord says, sama is having the intelligence fixed in me. That implies a personal conception. This is not impersonal. Fixing intelligence on the Lord matures samanya or general rati into shanta or peaceful rati. So this is how samanya, general rati, that a lot of people have, that's very common. How does it get to shanta rati, which is the only thing that can produce rasa? It's fixing your intelligence on the Lord. So we can go to people who have a general love for God, and they have a general love. It's real love for God. And by fixing their intelligence on the Lord, by meditating on the Lord, then it can become the Shanta Rasa. So some evidence that Srila Rupa Goswami gives is that the Vishnu Dharmottara Purana uses the word rasa for neutrality, a state of no happiness, no suffering, no hatred, no envy, and equality shown to all beings. So in the beginning of Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada talks about whether or not the Nectar of Devotion is authorized Shastra, and he gives some reasons for the fact that it is. One is that Srila Rupa Goswami is following Bharat Muni. Another is that Srila Rupa Goswami directly heard from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And another reason is that Srila Rupa Goswami quotes a lot of Shastra to back up all of his points. So he's going to say, yes, Shantaras is a rasa, and he's quoting another scripture in case somebody would say, well, that's not a real rasa. So this is Srila Prabhupada's translation of CC Madhya 19:212. Lord Krishna personally instructs Uddhava like this: when one's intelligence is fully attached to my lotus feet, but one does not render practical service, one has attained the stage called Shantarati or Sama. And again, we have this absence of service. Service is in dasya, this complete absence of mamata, no sense that even my God is not there. But we do have anubhavs. And anubhavs means some kind of service, but it's a different service than in dasyabhav. Okay, this is Majjhat Leela 19:212. Lord Chaitanya speaking to Srila Rupa Goswami. Without Shantarati, attachment to Krishna is very difficult to achieve. In other words, Shantarasi generally is going to be a stage. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, in other words, no one can be situated on the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being situated at least in Shanta Rasa. So in other words, you're not going to boom, be in Dasya Rasa or boom, be in Madhurya Rasa. First, you're going to be in Shanta Rasa. At the end of chapter 35, Prabhupada has this quote that Shanta Rasa is the beginning of personalism. One must first have some taste for the Lord as a person before you can have a specific relationship of service. So Sukadeva and Bilvamangala are examples of a person who went from impersonalism to Shanta, and then Bilvamangala went beyond Shanta. So for many jivas, Shanta Ras is their final destination. That's their eternal rasa. They don't want to be in Dasya Bhav. But for other jivas going through sadhana, we are going to first go through Shanta Rasa. So this is a pretty important rasa to understand. We have something in the chat. Okay. We should have time for some questions at the end. Okay, so here we're going to turn again to Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Srila Rupa Goswami on Shantaras. And I want to reiterate that for some people, Shantaras is a stepping stone. For others, it's their desired eternal place. And for some, there's going to be a mixture. As Srila Rupa Goswami has already explained, sometimes these rasas are mixed. So a person could be mixed neutrality and servitorship. So here, Majjhat 19:214, Lord Chaitanya instructing Srila Rupa Goswami, giving up all desires not connected with Krishna is the business of one who is in Shantaras. Only a devotee of Krishna can be situated on that platform. He's thus called a Shantaras Bhakta. And the next verse, Majjhat 19:215, when a devotee is situated on the platform of Shantarasa, he desires neither elevation to the heavenly planets nor liberation. Now, we did talk about how the Shanta Bhaktas may still be into liberation because they see it helps them, but they're not interested in liberation in and of itself. These are the results of karma, going on with the quote, these are the results of karma and gyan, and the devotee considers them no better than hell. A person situated on the Shantaras platform manifests the two transcendental qualities of detachment from all material desires and full attachment to Krishna. The next verse, Majjhat 19:216. Again, this is Mahaprabhu instructing Srila Rupa Goswami. A person who's devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, is not afraid of anything. Elevation to the heavenly kingdom, condemnation to hell, and liberation from material bondage all appear the same to a devotee. The next verse, 217. These two qualities of the Shanta stage spread through the lives of all devotees. They are like the quality of sound in the sky. Sound vibration is found in all material elements. So there has to be this element of Shantaras for all the devotees. Going on to the next verse, Majjhat 19:218. It is the nature of Shantaras that not even the smallest intimacy exists. So no mamata, no sense Krishna is mine. Rather, knowledge of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma is prominent. So not even Krishna is my God. Not even Krishna is my God. Not even Krishna is my master, just the Lord. Next verse, CC Majjhat 19:219. On the platform of Shantaras, one realizes only his constitutional position, but when one is raised to the platform of Dasyaras, he better understands the full opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one is not getting full understanding. Okay, let's look at some other descriptions of Shantaras that can help us to understand. So here I'm going beyond what's in Nectar Devotion beyond what's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, pulling from other sources to help us understand. So this is Nectar of Instruction, verse 8, purport, where Srila Prabhupada is quoting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says, Raganuga Bhakti, or spontaneous devotional service, can be executed in the Shantaras when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or flute in the hand of Krishna, or the flowers around Krishna's neck. So I personally know a devotee who aspires to be one of the bees humming around Krishna's garland. This is Srila Prabhupada's purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela 8:19. He says, a devotee therefore must be attracted by the behavior of the inhabitants of Vrindavana who live in a relationship with Krishna. The land, water, cows, trees, and flowers serve Krishna in Shantaras. Now it's interesting it has this word serve, because they're not rendering service in Dasya Bhav. It's just, they're not considering Krishna needs my service. Looking at the purport to Bhagavatam 7.6.2, Prabhupada says, every living entity has an intimate relationship with God. One should therefore glorify the Lord in the adoration of Shantaras, or revive his eternal relationship with Vishnu as a servant in Dasyaras, a friend in Sakyaras, a parent in Vatsalyaras, or a conjugal lover in Madhuryaras. All these relationships are on the platform of love. So we have this glorification, which you could say is service, but it's not in the mood of Dasya. This is Prabhupada's purport to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Majja 19.154. There are also other planets in the spiritual world called Vaikuntha planets, and on these planets Lord Narayana is worshipped with awe and veneration. On these planets Shantaras is prevalent, and some of the devotees are also connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Dasyaras, the mellow of servitorship. So in Vaikuntha planets, the primary rasa is Shantaras, and there's some Dasya Ras. There may be others as well. There's sometimes some elements of friendship, and we know Devahuti lives on a planet with Lord Kapila Dev in Vatsalya Bhav, but it's a reverential Vatsalya Bhav. But the primary mood in the Vaikunthas is this Shanta. And here we're looking at all the elements of rasa together, all the elements of rasa together. So here we have the stimulus, the vibhav, which is alambana, basic, vishaya, Krishna himself, ashraya, the devotees with similar mood, and udipana, the various stimulant. This stimulates the dominant primary sthai-bhav, in this case neutrality, which mixes with various emotions, vyavitari bhavs and secondary sthai-bhavs, joy, disappointment, anticipation, and so forth. And this then manifests as voluntary behavior and involuntary behavior. Voluntary and involuntary behavior. Okay, I'd like to have a breakout room where you can discuss the role of neutrality in Vaikuntha and in Goloka, the role of neutrality in Vaikuntha and in Goloka. And I think I have the breakout rooms all set up, and I think I've done it properly. Okay, I'm going to give you 7 minutes for this. So just what is the role of Shantaras in Vaikuntha and in Goloka Vrindavan? So these are the components of rasa, the basic relationship or sthai-bhav, acted on by the vibhav, and the vyavitari bhavs manifesting in anubhavs and sattvika bhavs producing rasa, or the basic connection, which is stimulated, has various transitory emotions, voluntary and involuntary expressions, and results in taste. So we can have a little bit, if we have just a few minutes for, if anyone has general questions on Shanta Rasa.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, we were discussing a breakout session in Vaikuntha, the Shankha Chakra Gada Padma. They serve in Shankaras. Is that understanding correct?
Interesting. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it explains that these are actually manifestations of the Lord himself. In fact, Ramchandra's brothers are considered manifestations of these. At least Bharat is a manifestation of Sudarshan, I believe. I'd have to look that up, see if I can find that for you. So Sudarshan is almost always worshipped as Vishnu himself rather than a devotee. Let me just see if I can quickly find this. Yes, okay. So I will put this in the chat. Interesting thing. So here we have yes, I would also say that, but here it's not, I mean, at least this reference from the CC, we have that what I just put in the chat, that Ramachandra's Narayan, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna are Sesha, Chakra, and Shanka. So that Lakshman is Sesha Naga, and Bharat is Sudarshan Chakra, and Shatrugna is the conch shell. I don't know about the club, Kamodakai, and the lotus, but it's reasonable to assume that those are also Vishnu Tattva. Sundari Gopi?
Mataji, I wanted to know what is, can you explain about that neutrality in Vaikuntha and Goloka? Your understanding. I mean, we discussed, but we don't know what is the truth.
Well, you can see that in Goloka Vrindavan, neutrality is manifest mostly in the plants, the animals, and the objects, and the whole environment. So Prabhupada's saying the water, the trees, the houses, the insects like the bees, those are all in Shantaras. They're providing the background situation. In Vaikuntha, that's true also of the people. So when, if you think about, again, if you think about most religions of the world, when they talk about going to the kingdom of God or going to heaven, it's very Shantaras mood, isn't it? That everyone's just going around going, Gloria, Gloria, Gloria. So it's very much that kind of mood, the perfect kingdom. God is the king, God is the ruler, and we are here happily in God's kingdom. We're not rendering personal service to him. Just like, we're all living in a country. And let's say we like our country, and let's say we have a mood of patriotism towards our country, but we may not be doing any practical service for our country. But we may be happy, I'm happy living in my country with this ruler that I like, let's just say theoretically. Something like that. Is that helpful?
I got the point, Mataji, but the clouds also want to serve in Golok. They want to shade Krishna. And
yes. So there's anubhavas. So anubhavas mean voluntary activities that are expressing your love. And that's why I kept bringing up, how do we distinguish anubhavas from dasya? And the only, I spent a lot of time asking various scholars on this point. And the only thing we could come up with is the dasya bhav, there's some sense that Krishna needs my service, that I'm really helping the Lord. There's some element of this mamata. There's some element of intimacy, of familiarity that I'm actually helping. Like, if I'm doing some service for you, I'm generally doing service for you because I feel you have some need of that. Like, otherwise, how is it service? If you don't need it, does that make sense?
yeah, I'm fulfilling my desires just otherwise.
Well, maybe. At Shantaras, they're not just fulfilling their desires. They have pure love for Krishna. But they're glorifying Krishna not because they feel they're rendering service to Krishna. They don't feel that I'm rendering service to Krishna. That's not their mood. Rendering service again is, oh, you need some help, I'll help you out. I'll come and help you out. I'll fan you. I'll cook for you. I'll wash your clothes. I'll, do things for you. I'll carry you around. That's dasya. And again, there can be mixed. So those in Shantaras can have some mix of dasya also. Does that help?
Yes, yes.
Very deep fundamental question. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll take just two more and then we're going to end. Amruta Aklekar.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
All right.
Actually, Mataji, you said that in Shantaras there is no intimacy. So I couldn't understand the examples of cows because when Krishna went to Mathura, the cows were so disturbed that they couldn't even eat. So how is it like?
Who is so disturbed?
The
Oh, the
cows,
cows.
they were so disturbed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the Vyavichari bhavs. Those are the emotions. But again, there's not a sense of intimacy. If you want to think of a material example of Shanta Ras, you can think of the way people feel around, movie stars, musician stars, politicians, but there's no intimacy. You don't have a sense that, oh, this is my movie star. You may feel, some sort of taste, some sort of pleasure, and some sort of emotions around them, but you're not going to feel that intimacy. If you're a servant, you feel some intimacy. You feel, though, this is my master, and this is the person that I'm serving. Is that clear?
Yes, Mataji.
Rukmini Devi is in Madhurya Bhav for the question in the chat. Madhurya, she's in Madhurya Bhav. She's in Conjugal Ras. Why is the Nectar Devotion one of the important books for devotees to read? Let me answer that, and then we will end. This is the science of Bhakti Yoga. If we don't understand Nectar Devotion, we're going to have a very difficult time making advancement in Bhakti Yoga. Beginning, middle, end of story. Srila Prabhupada translated this book, wrote this book in 1969. It is the science of bhakti. So we have the first part of Nectar Devotion is, okay, what's the process of bhakti in sadhana? What are the levels of bhakti? But then if we want to really get into bhakti, we've got to understand this science of rasa. We've got to start, working on the platform of a relationship with Krishna. If we don't do that, we're not actually going to advance. So I can't overstate the importance. Of course, a lot of what's in Nectar Devotion is also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So thank you very much. Anything good in this class is from Srila Rupa Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and of course, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master. Anything wrong in this presentation is my responsibility. So please correct any mistakes that I make or ignore them. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.